Hello, hello, everyone. So thankful for you to join me today. Hopefully, my mouth and words and thoughts will come together better than they just did. This is our Momentum Planners webinar. We're going to have a lot of people on today's call. At least we're expecting quite a few people. So I'm already seeing, 42 different people in there. And the way Zoom works is more people pile in. So thanks, everyone. I think it's going to be a really good call. I'm really looking forward to the questions that you have. While people are jumping in, just a few sort of housekeeping items. We love to see the chat happen. And so if you want to chat, is normally on the right side of the screen. Make sure you toggle the little button that's there from all panelists to all panelists and attendees. That way you're talking to everyone. But if there's something that you really just want to say to me, or you really, you're having technical troubles and things like that, then the best person with the size of group that we have is actually going to be Jess Summers. So as always, Jess is in the background doing her thing, being awesome and helping me keep everything going. So again, we're up to looking around 90 folks on the webinar, which is fantastic. Thanks so much. Just a quick question, answer to a question. Leanne asked, are we muted and video off? Yes, you are muted and video off. Towards the end of the webinar, I'm going to ask some people if they would like me to walk through their projects, their plans, to sort of see how we can use the methodologies. And so be thinking about whether you want to be one of those people. With the size group, what tends to happen is everyone thinks somebody else is going to volunteer, and then nobody volunteers. And these work really, they work a lot better when we see some actual projects and it's not just me talking for a long time. Now, I'm just curious. I'd like to start off with a couple of quick things. If this is your first time on a Momentum Planners webinar, will you just type first time, new here, whatever. I just want to kind of get a grip of how many people are new. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. And you're also using the chat. Fantastic. A lot of new here's. Thanks so much for joining me. This is going to be really, really good time. Oh, you guys are awesome. I really love how everybody's chipping in there. So second off, and I just want you to think about it for a second. We're going to take 30 seconds. And I want you to reflect upon what one thing you most want to get out of this call. What one thing you most want to get out of this call. We're going to do that so that you get the engagement and so that you're paying attention to that. So what one thing do you most want to get out of this call? And if you feel so inclined to share, go ahead and put that in the chat window too, so we can kind of see what's going on there, and we can have a really good call around that. Again, we're up to 100 or so people. That's fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today, guys. I know it's what day is it? It's Thursday. So I'm used to doing monthly momentum calls on Monday, and I know Monday is a really important day for a lot of us. Thursday, we're sort of wrapping up or sort of going in now. Here in just a second, I'm going to switch over to a webinar that I have prepared because we have a lot of material to go over. But there's one thing that I wanted to start with, and that is why we're doing this on the 25th of January rather than the first week in January. And over the years of teaching this and just seeing what people do, what we tend to do is at the end of the year, or maybe at the first of the year, we start and we have really audacious goals. New Year's resolutions, everything like that. And then January happens, right? January happens and things start to go sideways a little bit, okay? Things start to go a little sideways. Maybe you get sick. For instance, I've been sick for a few weeks. We've had some other family stuff going on. And all of a sudden we look up at those January resolutions, we look at those January goals, and for some of us, in my experience, a small amount of us, everybody's like happy, like, yes, I'm rocking it. But for most of us, it's like, ooh, I'm kind of missing the mark, or ooh, maybe I should just give up and eat worms, or ooh, what do I do? So one thing that I want to encourage everyone is just to let whatever happened with your planning and whatever happened with your resolutions making at the end of the year / beginning of the year, go and actually think of sort of February as a reboot month. I really like the Groundhog Day. I really like Groundhog Day as a time to reboot, because January is behind you. And exactly as Jane says, right? What happens in January stays in January. We can't change that. But what we can do is look at January and say, okay, what are the patterns that happened? And what are the trends that I'm seeing from January that might inform better goal setting and better plan making for the rest of the year? And that's the gift of January, really, is it kind of lets us get sunk into reality, and learn from that and go forward. It's not a month where I want us to look at it from just another tool to beat ourselves up and another tool to be, demotivated and frustrated. Okay. So that's where I wanted to start. And that's why we do this later in the month, because I'm hoping you'll take this and you'll rethink your goals, and then you'll come up with better sets of goals and resolutions, or actually not resolutions. We'll talk about that. Okay. So we have a lot going on. One other thing is I'm going to start talking this way, but when we go into more people's plans and projects, you'll see me spin my desk so we have a whiteboard behind me, but it can be hard to see when I'm doing this sort of thing. So jumping right in, let me share my screen. Okay, and because if I go full screen, you guys are going to see, I won't be able to see what's going on. I don't think I'm able to see what's going on anyway. So there we go. I'll go full screen, and I'll just do it this way. All right, so today's special. For those of you who are in the right age, you remember that whole show on Nickelodeon with the mannequin and everything? Okay, if you don't, anyways, I just love it. So here's what we're talking about today. We're going to go through some core concepts with planners. We're going to walk through each planner, starting with the annual momentum planner, and go from there. And then we're going to talk about themes and priorities and how they're better than resolutions. And finally, we're going to talk about shaping the quarters. That's kind of what you're doing. I come from the military school of presentation, which means you tell folks what you're going to talk about. You talk about what you tell them you're going to talk about, and then you kind of end telling them what you talked about. It works. Hey, why break it? So let's go through some backgrounds. There are a lot of new folks, so just going to set it up this way. The planner started as teaching aids. I was working with clients and students and workshop participants, and we needed a way to corral our ideas. And so they've grown from that since 2009, I believe. They've grown into what they are today. They are more, well, I want you to be super clear about the difference between brainstorming and planning. A challenge that some people have is that they try to do their brainstorming with the planners. And that could be really challenging because there's not a lot of space. The planners are about constraint and structure and displacement. And brainstorming is actually the opposite side of that. So when you're going through your brainstorming, it's really great to have another piece of paper. I prefer whiteboards. You guys know how much I love whiteboards. So you want to do your brainstorming in those spaces and use the planners to help you corral those ideas and really harness them. In that way, you'll be less frustrated about some of the constraints, like there's only 5 lines, and that gets super frustrating for creative folks because creative folks are trying to brainstorm on the planner when you need to be brainstorming somewhere else, right? And we talked about this, I believe, in September, but we'll talk about it a little bit more here. They're meant to be your productivity dashboard and not your running to-do list. And this is what mixes people up as well. We'll talk a little bit about block planning later on. And they're like, where do I capture all the 17 gazillion things that I have to do the thing? Well, your weekly momentum planner is probably not the place to do that, right? The action item catcher is a really good companion if you don't use other tools like Asana or Basecamp or Todoist or whatever tool you use. So you might want to have the action item catcher as that sort of place. Also, the individual project planner can be really good for capturing a lot of the smaller to-dos. But again, the planners are more like your dashboard and showing you a general overview of what's going on there. Okay, so some core concepts. Now I'm gonna go a little bit faster here because though there are a lot of new customers and new users on the call, which is fantastic, we also have a lot of posts and we have a lot of content that will help you do this, it help you learn more about some of these ideas. And so I'm going a little bit briefer here so we have more time for Q&A and we have more time for actual discussion, but I want to set these up. So the trickiest thing about the planners is understanding the pyramid of action perspectives. Okay, now what the hell does that mean, Charlie? I'm glad you asked. What I want you to start thinking about is that different projects have different amounts of time that they're going to take to get done. Now that's obvious, except for many of us don't really know the difference between a quarter-sized project and a monthly-sized project and a weekly-sized project. And unfortunately, those same projects end up on the same to-do list. And that's really challenging because you might have a quarter-sized project like, hire, 6 teammates for whatever, right? And you might have a weekly sized project like, finish the TPS report on the same to-do list, but that makes your brain go haywire because you can't possibly get that bigger monthly size project done in a week amount of time. So you sort of like don't know what to do with that. But on the other hand, if you're sort of looking at your quarterly projects and this is weekly one, your brain's like, what the hell is that doing there? Okay. So I want you to think in terms of containment in the sense of, in our language, I will use objectives sort of interchangeably with projects because that's really what they are. But quarterly size projects, we call them quarterly objectives. They contain, you can kind of see here with the little blue block, they contain different chunks of projects of about month-sized projects that, if completed, are part of those bigger quarterly projects, right? And then you have weekly projects that are underneath this. It's a Russian doll scenario. You've probably seen those where, one little doll goes inside of another slightly bigger doll, which goes inside a slightly bigger doll, which goes inside a slightly bigger doll, and so on. Now, the name of the game here, and you'll see this throughout all of the planners, is that you have 5 lines for each size project on that particular type of thing. So let me pull up some demo planners and I'll show you what I mean here. Presentation failed here and that I actually didn't pull up my document before starting this. So bear with me for just a second. Be chewing over this whole quarter size, monthly size, weekly size project thing while I'm doing this. Almost there, guys. Sorry about this. Okay, I'm going to switch screens real quick as soon as that loads up for me. It's taking its sweet time. Everybody drink water because we're all tend to be underhydrated anyways. So there we go. All righty. So I'm going to switch screens here. Okay. So what you can see here, and we're looking at the annual momentum planner, is that we have 5 sort of lines for annual goals. We have 5 lines for objectives. And you're going to see that same trend throughout everything that we look at. When we zoom into the quarterly, we're going to have 5 lines sort of there, 5 lines there. It's not that I love the number 5. Well, I do actually love the number 5 for different reasons. I might explain it another time. But it gets you to start thinking about that. Now, why 5? There are a lot of research and field work and seeing what works for folks. What I've noticed is that when you really choose 5 of your most important objectives of projects, like that's the limit of what most people are going to do. However, what we tend to do to ourselves is we put down all the 17 gazillion things that we would like to do, and we put that down and say, we're going to do all of those. And so at the end of the day or month or quarter or whatever that is, we've done 3 to 5 things. And then we use the remainder of those things we put on the to-do list just to beat ourselves up about. Okay. So I don't want you to do that, right? If you're not going to do them anyways, don't put them on the list, right? Only put the things on your planner that you are actually committing to doing. And what this sort of dovetails on is what we like to call a project cage match or a priority cage match, right? Some of your projects are going to win no matter what. Some are going to lose pretty much no matter what. And then there's sort of these middle ones where they can kind of win or they can lose depending upon how much attention you're going to lose on there or you're going to put on them. So we really want your planners to be focused on those things that you will do, not the things you would like to do, not the things that would be cool if you would do it, not the things that would be cool that someone else told you to do those, but those things that you will do. And this is where that difference between brainstorming and the planners come in, because you might do a lot of brainstorming. You might brainstorm the 17 different things that you would like to do this year, and then have to go through the creative grief and tussle and flailing to figure out which 5 of those you're going to do. But if you're like most creative people that I know, you'll cheat and you'll put 8 down on the list. And then you'll realize somewhere in the process that you're really only going to do 4 or 5 anyways, but that's a process, right? And so you want to do that somewhere else. And then when you put something on the planner, it becomes a commitment. It becomes you will do this, not that you're thinking about doing this. And as you go along, if you notice that you can't consistently complete 5 monthly sized projects at the same time, 5 monthly objectives at the same time, you stop assuming that you're going to be able to do it unless you make other massive changes that we're not necessarily going to talk about today, but you have to make some other changes in your life productivity or your systems to beat that. So if you're only able to do 4 a month, stop planning against that 5th one. Just do 4 until you develop a rhythm. And then maybe you add another 5. But if you notice that you're doing 2, guess what? Do 2. And choose 2 at the beginning so that you don't have those other remaining things that you use just as a cudgel to beat yourself up with. Okay, so you're going to see that same trend all the way down. When we go into the monthly, you're going to see 5 monthly objectives. Now, remember how when I went back and I said projects of different sizes? What you'll see on every planner is you'll see 3 different slices of time. Okay, so the monthly momentum planner is a great example of this. You see your quarterly objectives so that you get a really big view of why your monthly projects matter, what they tie to, okay? And you have a space to put that. You have your monthly objectives here so that you get a good grip of like, okay, here's what's on deck this month. And then this weekly column over here becomes where you do the how. How are you going to finish these particular projects? What specific projects and actions are you going to take at the weekly size to complete your monthly objectives, which tie to your quarter objectives? And you'll see that trend with every planner that you'll see. I'm back to the, let me go back up to the annual momentum planner, right? So you'll see the biggest view that will allow here, right? And then you'll see 1 step down. You have your goals here, and over the quarters, and we'll talk about quarter shaping a little bit later, you see here's how these quarters will achieve that annual goal. All right, here's how they relate to the annual goal. And you'll see that again all the way down when you go into the quarterly objectives. You'll see, okay, I've got here my 1 step higher goal, boom, done. Here's the goal, here's the projects on deck for this quarter, boom, done right here. And then here's the how space. Again, going down. At the monthly, you see 1 step higher. You see here's what's on deck this month. Here's the house space. And then if we go into the daily, you'll see, 1 second, let me pull it up. Okay, so the daily momentum planner is different because what it's assuming is that your weekly momentum planner is governing what's going on that week. And some people, we've learned through experimentation, just have to start with the daily and they can't think about the month, they can't think about the quarterly. And so this just drives your day in that way. But you still see the same sort of thing. Bigger goals, here are your constraints, here's how you're going to get these things done and when, okay? So I'm going to switch back over to my webinar because that's the easiest way to show what we mean by action perspectives and how it fits into what we're doing. And so it's all about the chunking. It's all about taking these ideas and shaping them into the level of action that you need to, so that when you go to your to-do list, you're not trying to figure out, or excuse me, you go to that planner, you're not trying to figure out what it relates to or how you're going to get it done. Okay. I'm going to check questions real quick to see. All right. So let me see. I have some clarifications. I know that's going pretty quickly. Can you please delve a bit more into the house space of the monthly? Okay, house space. I'm actually going to punt that one a little bit, because I think in practice we're going to see how that comes up when we do a few people's projects and we look at how that's going to work out. Okay, so hold that thought. I'll come back to it. All righty, let me. I'm not sharing my screen here. Okay, so back to the webinar. Jess, are people seeing my webinar yet? I can't tell, actually.
Yep, we can see it.
Great, thank you. Let me get this thing out of the way. Okay, so another thing that people struggle with is the concept that the planners help you manage your energy. And you likely have heard me talk about this, or you've probably heard other people talk about it, is that there are different, we have morning birds, we have night owls, we have afternoon emus. I made that up because we don't really have a real name for that, and it's fun. But I'm actually currently reading Dan Pink's new book called When, and he calls them early bird, or what he calls them larks, owls, and third birds, right? With third birds being sort of those afternoon emus. So we're saying the same thing. He just has done a whole book of research around this, okay? It's a fantastic book thus far. But the main point is our energy level fluctuates throughout the day. You know this at an intuitive level. You know there are some times where you are not your best version of human. You don't need to be subjected to other people. You know there are some times where you can get your creative work done. You know there are other times where you're dead and you just can't, right? And so what the planners will help you do, especially as we start talking about time blocking and how they fit in here, is that they will help you do the creative heavy lifting when you're creative and admin when not. That's just one example of that. But the key thing is, like, we want to think about, like many of us when we went to kindergarten, you had, we had those little shape sorter balls where like the square thing goes in the square hole, the circle thing goes in the circle hole, the triangle thing goes in the triangle hole. We're trying to do that with your schedule. So that if there's a creative project, it goes during your creative time, okay? Or your focus project, it goes during your focus time. If there are admin blocks, they go into your admin blocks time. So that's really what's working there, okay? That's really the main point that I want to say here, except for this. Peak performing creatives and peak performing people, whether or not you consider yourself a creative or not, we only really have 4 to 6 really high level focused blocks of energy at a time, or excuse me, high level creative energy blocks at a time. So 4 to 6 hours is about the most you're going to get before most people will start to peter out, okay? That creates the constraint. That creates the constraint to go by, and you have it, I have it, Angela has it, Jess has it. We all sort of have that constraint. Now with practice, with a lot of energy management, things like that, you may be able to do more consistently, but I just kind of want you to sink into the fact that when it comes to creative hours, when it comes to focus, I'm going to use creative blocks and focus blocks interchangeably here. We've had a language shift, but when it comes to that type of energy, you have 4 to 6 hours tops. How you use those 4 to 6 hours is going to make the biggest difference to your momentum long-term. If you squander it, if you chop it up with a bunch of meetings, if you don't use it, then you're going to end up at the end of the day super mad at yourself because you did a bunch of tasks. You've like been the to-do list ninja, but you haven't actually gotten the main stuff done. Okay. So that's the main point here. And we now have the 4 kinds of blocks. I'm just going to delete this from my slide because I'm going to be tired of stop saying it. We have a post for this. Jess is going to drop it into the chat window pretty quickly. Okay, so we have 4 kinds of blocks. 1 second, I have a question. Okay, Tina, I see your question. I'll come back to that a little bit later. So 4 kinds of blocks, focus blocks. You all can read. You're super smart people. The big thing here, and we have a post about this as well. The big thing here is just what I was just saying. Those focus blocks, those 90 minutes to 2-hour blocks where you could sit down and get something done are your limiting factor for momentum. They're just a limiting factor there. So what people get confused about is they'll say, hey, Charlie, like I noticed that when I actually get into the flow of something, like I only can do that for 30 or 45 minutes and then I got to go do something else. So does that mean that my focus block is just 45 minutes? Or does that mean, or what does that mean? What a focus block will entail is also the amount of startup time that it takes you to get into that, and also the transition time. So if it takes you, 10 minutes of arranging the pillows in your office to be just right, and then you got to put the right socks on to sit down and get your writing done, all of that time is contained within a focus block. You don't have to have a separate sort of block for that. And at the end of it, if you need to walk around your office 8 times and do whatever you need to do, I know I'm being silly here, but some of us do have some strange rituals around our creativity, right? It includes all of that stuff, and that's one coherent chunk. The limb factor, your momentum, and as a creative person, and I focus a lot, you guys know, on creativity and innovation and leadership and those types of things. What I will say is if you're not finding space for one focus block a day, you're going to really struggle to get the right things done because there's just too many requirements on you. There's too many reports. There's too much writing. There's too much thinking and planning. And there's too much so much of that sort of stuff going on. You're going to really struggle. What you really want to start shooting for is around 2. I've just noticed, again, in my work with clients and students over the last decade or so, that around 2 starts to get you some momentum. And you can feed things and get them going forward and get the momentum going and still manage to have your service time. You can still manage to have your admin time, so on and so forth. So shoot for 2 focus blocks. But if you don't have one, that's really the place that you have to start thinking. Now, this particular webinar is not about what you can do to reclaim and find more focus blocks and things like that. That's its own sort of webinar I should probably do, but I'm not doing it today. But just note that if you don't have that one focus block, you're going to struggle as a creative person, as a leader, because you don't have the time you need to make it happen. Okay. Looking at our time. Okay. I've already talked about constraints and displacement. Don't need to say a whole lot here, except for this. Constraints at the beginning, you hate them. We creative people hate them. Like, don't tell me I can only do 5 things, Charlie. I will prove you wrong. I will do 17 things because that's who I am, damn it. After a certain amount of time of fighting against that and flailing against that, you can recognize, hey, wait a second. The gift of a constraint is that if I accept that I can only do 5 things, then I get to make sure that I'm doing the right 5 things. And because there's few things more frustrating I've learned myself with other people than getting to the end of a month or getting to the end of a quarter, getting to the end of the year, and you've been busy as hell, but you haven't actually been pushing the ship forward, right? That's what the constraint will allow you to do, is make sure that you're pushing the right things forward. Okay. So, remember that when you say yes to something in a certain amount of time, you say no to everything else. Okay. So make sure you're saying yes to the right things on your schedule. Easier said than done, I know, just a reminder. I'm going to be brief here as well. 2-hour rule. You'll notice a symmetry. Focus blocks, 90 minutes to 2 hours. 2-hour rule. Now, the basic idea is most of us don't know what we can do with a full day of creativity, because it doesn't happen a full day of just focusing on getting something done. And so that's where I say full days are like unicorns. We tend to punt our work, be like, boom. At some point in the future, I'll have a full day, or I'll have like a whole week and I'll get to work on this thing. And that week never comes, that day never comes. But most of us with some work can fight and clamor for 2 hours away from whatever the distractions and interruptions are to get something done. So I want you to use 2-hour blocks as the building block for your projects and your days. So when you're thinking about whatever you're doing, and we'll talk about that, it's really think, okay, how many 2-hour blocks is it going to take to get this done? Because with the other tools that we have, you can see, okay, if this is going to take me 10 focus blocks and I only have 3 available focus blocks a week, that means that it's going to take me 4 weeks to do this particular project. Okay. It's set up pretty well for you that way. Now, you can, we often will underestimate. We also, I've learned people overestimate as often as they underestimate. And so it might take longer than those 10 focus blocks, but at least you have a baseline to start from. And at least it's easier than saying like, it'll take 8 hours, which I found people have a harder time slotting into their schedules in different ways. Okay. So that's really all that's about that. One thing that people ask me a lot is, Charlie, how long does it take to keep this whole planning thing going? It seems like it takes forever. I just don't have time for that. Totally get it. The setup cost is always harder than once you have it going. And once you have it going, you can totally use the 10-15 split, which is you take 10 minutes in the morning to review your plan. You take 15 minutes at the end of the afternoon, at the end of the day, to make your plan for the next day. And you just do that over and over again. And you never in that position to where you wake up in the morning and you have to decide that morning what you're doing. That's actually what you want to avoid because you're still trying to start up. Way better to use that if you're a morning person, way better to use that amount of time just getting after it than spending your first amount of time really going through the hard work of figuring out what you're going to do for the day. Do that at the end of the day. The reason you want to do it at the end of the day is because I found that most people make better plans for themselves the next day than they do in the morning. In the morning, we're exceptionally optimistic about what we're going to be able to get done today. But when you're tired at the end of the day, you could probably say, wait a second, I'm going to do less, because your emotional state at that time is like, oh, I've done so on and so forth. And so you actually take better care of yourself when you make decisions when and as if you're going to be tired than when you're super fired up in the morning. And it's always better to accomplish your goals and then have some extra room rather than to have 16 things on your list and do 3 and then feel bad about that for the rest of the day. Okay. I've dropped a lot before I go into themes and priorities. And so I'm actually going to look at questions real quick to see what's happening. So Jess, what are you seeing in as far as trends go that I should answer?
Oh, man, we have a lot of good questions out there. I mean, they're all kind of like all across the board. So if there's any in particular that you see that you want to kind of pick out, I think that might be a good idea.
Okay, so let me jump in here, guys, and see what's going on. Ooh, not that button. Not that button. Alrighty. Scrolling up. Still reading through. I kind of go, I'm going to kind of go backwards because it might be easier. I got a question from Bernadette. She says, does that mean it's best to fill out the daily planner for the next day only on the preceding afternoon? I would say it tends to be better. But if you don't do it that day, if you don't do it in the afternoon, don't use that as an excuse not to do it the next morning. And I know that sounds funny, Bernadette, but I know far too well the tendency to be like, I didn't do it then, and I'm just going to roll with it today. But if possible, yeah, filling out your daily momentum planner the day before is a good thing to do, because especially if you're using 10-15 split. What I would recommend is look at your weekly planner, look at your weekly momentum planner, say, okay, what are my projects? What's going on? What are my priorities? Good, got it. Okay. Then you look at your plan for tomorrow and you say, okay, what did I actually do today? Okay, great. Okay, what do I need to do tomorrow to deliver against those weekly better, let me pause. This is why, guys, I can't monitor chat and talk at the same time because I'm multi-process. So breathe. Everybody drink some water. Okay, here we go. Um, it's better to fill out the daily momentum planner at the end of the day, because you can then look at your weekly momentum planner. You can evaluate what you've done today, see how far you've gotten, then look at tomorrow and say, okay, based upon that, what do I need to do to keep pushing the ball forward? I'm aware that many of our customers in our audience are women, so I'm careful not to use so many football metaphors, right? Because I'm a football guy. You guys also have heard some military speak in there. That's my native language. But the whole job is you just want to push that ball forward every day getting it, every day getting it, because that's how you win, right? So yes, that's what I would recommend, Bernadette, is to fill out the daily planner at the end of the afternoon. Let's see. I have a question from Cheryl. Any tips for estimating how many focus blocks a project requires? Oh, that's a hard one because projects come in all sorts of sizes. Okay. So what I would say is after you start getting above 10 or 15, and the reason I keep using 10 or 15, you see me using small numbers. That goes back to a lot of research in neurology and the way that we think. We actually don't handle big numbers and big things really well. We just don't understand them. But 5 to 10 things, like fingers, we understand pretty well. So what I generally tell my clients is whenever we start getting into like the 10 to 15 range, that's when we start thinking, okay, this is a monthly size project. Okay, this is going to take us to really sit down and do it. And you don't necessarily need to block out a quarter size project. If it's more than that, you know you've got a quarter size project. You're going to have to figure out how you're going to chunk that down over the course of months. So really what you want to start doing, and we'll do this in a little bit, is you want to look at the smaller parts and saying, okay, I need to create, I use book metaphors a lot. I'm an author writing a book, and we all sort of understand books. So you might be like, okay, how long is it going to take me to write a book? You have no idea how long it's going to take you to write a book. But how long might it take you to create a table of contents? Okay, now that's a smaller size chunk that we can kind of feel. And you're like, I think I can do that. Novice writers will say, I think I could come up with a table of contents in like 15 minutes. Okay, you try it, probably not going to work out so well for you, right? But you're like, you know what, that's between 4 to 6. That's what it feels like to me. Okay, so that's how long it's going to do that. How long might it take me to write this section, right? There's 6 sections of this chapter. I think, a section of this chapter is probably going to be about 1,500 words. I think I can get that done in 5 focus blocks. And then you can just build up from these smaller units that we can understand. That's really the name of the game. And in the work that I do about, in like start finishing your projects, which is another course I do that's really just about projects. The main thing is learning how to chunk down projects and goals. Once you learn that, the world is your oyster. And I focus so much on that, guys, because we just don't deal with big projects, with big numbers, with big groups of people. We don't do that well. And our mind starts chunking anyways. So it's the master of the chunk here. I think I've captured quite a bit of the questions. Okay, so I have at least 2 questions about the Gantt chart on the annual momentum planner. So I'm going to jump there real quick. So bear with me as I switch screens. Okay, so we're back. I'll go to the offending planner real quick. So what's up with this white space, this sort of Gantt space area? I'll flip and then some of us, okay, Charlie, be careful about how much you go into the epistemology of time because ain't nobody got time for that. But I want you all to sort of think about this in this way. We think about time very strangely. Much like particle wave physics, where something can be a particle and a wave at the same time, depending upon how you look at it and how you test it. Time is like that. And sometimes we look at it linearly, we look at it in a straight line. And then other times we think about it in a circle, okay? And then yet other times we think about it in top down. So a lot of times it depends upon how you're thinking about a question, how you're thinking about, whether this is a line, whether it's a top down thing, or whether it's a circle, will tell you kind of what you need to be thinking about. Okay. So this area that's in the bottom here of this is a mini Gantt chart area, because sometimes it's useful to do things like, I have to draw it out real quick, but to say, okay, let's look at the year. That obviously has 12 blocks. I'm going to screw this up, but you guys can kind of see how it's going to work. For some people, it makes a lot of sense for them to say, okay, so I know this is a quarter size project. I'm just going to line it up and say this is project 1. Or I'm just going to call it project 1, chunk 1, because it could be something like starting a business where you might do some of the research that then follows up to building a website that then follows up to so on and so forth, right? For some people, it's incredibly helpful to see how this project then will come through where this is still the same type of project, but this is chunk 2, okay? And it's helpful for them to see. Go ahead.
Can you stop sharing your screen so we can get a better view of
thank you.
your whiteboard?
See, this is why Jess is amazing, because I would have never thought about that, and you guys are yelling at me, and I'm not seeing it. Okay. And so for some people, it's super helpful to see, here's how this is shaped over the course of a year, and it creates a little mini Gantt chart for them, especially when you have things that start to be interrelated. Project 1 may be something that you have to do before you can kickstart project 2. And I'm using very abstract things here because I don't necessarily want to keep talking about businesses and books. We'll talk about your projects as we come in, as we go forward. And so sometimes it's useful to see that project 1 leads me to being able to do this chunk of that project, but it also unlocks project 2, and I have to do them in that order. So that's what that space is there to sort of help you when we start talking about shaping and using your quarter that way. Okay, so this is definitely one of those things to where, what I'll also say is, without going into the way the Gantt charts work, what I like about that type of thing is because it also shows you that if you get 2 months behind on project 2, you get 2 months behind on project 1, if all of these other projects are related on that, you start getting what I call the sliding project cascade. I know I come up with all these words. Bear with me, guys. Sliding project cascade is when one project slips, and then it causes slippage in the other project. But then now that those projects are slipping, the projects that are stacked behind them start slipping. And all of a sudden, your whole job is managing this cascade of projects because you can't get the footing anymore. That Gantt chart in the middle also can show you the interconnections of projects and help you defeat the sliding project cascade before it really starts happening to you too much. So that's what that area is about. You see me pausing because I have another tool that uses a circular approach to the year that many clients actually like a lot better, but it's super hard to get that in the annual momentum planner. So that's not why we're doing it. That's why we're doing it. So the other thing to think about is you can also take this. If this whole thing makes you want to jump off a bridge and drink way more wine than you know is healthy, you can also switch perspective and go to a circular view of time. And I'll just, because we're on it and I never know what we're going to get into, y'all, you can switch all of that. Some of you are going to be like, this makes more sense now. And notice that all that I've done is change the presentation. Quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what you can also do is same view or same thing, project 1, chunk 1. You can see how that can happen in that quarter. And then this is project 2. Damn it, I keep doing that. Project 1, chunk 2. And then you probably tell if it has 3 chunks, and you can go that way, and then you can have another one, no more than 5. And some people think that flows better for them. Now, I know I've dumped a lot on you, didn't anticipate to go in there, so it's going to be a really rough explanation. Maybe another conversation at the time, or on the next monthly momentum call, if someone will bug me there, I'll go into more detail, but I definitely want to make sure that we have time to go into people's projects. I always kind of feel like Socrates. If you guys have read many of the Platonic dialogues, Socrates has this thing where, like, right when you're about to get to the heart of the conversation, he's always got to go somewhere, right? There's always some sort of things like, oh, got to go to the doctor now. Like right at the heart of it, you're like, man, you always leave us hanging. Plato is beautiful about that. And so sometimes I feel that way. No, I'm not a philosopher or anything, nor do I have that background. That's a joke, I actually do. Moving on. So that is what that section is all about. And on the screen, which you guys are not seeing because you're looking at me now, let me go back to that. That's what those little dotted lines are for. And that's what that's all about. Hopefully that's helpful. As that's a helpful explanation. The thing about the planners is, and you may have noticed this, some of them are great to use digitally. Some of them you might want to print out. And when it comes to it, I usually recommend people to print out the annual momentum planner, the quarterly planner, and the monthly momentum planner. And if you're going to do the digital thing, using the weeklies and the dailies are a good way to go, because your annual momentum planner really shouldn't change that much unless you're overestimating and you're not getting your stuff done. That's really, well, there are 3 reasons your annual momentum planner would change once you set it. 4 reasons. One is that you change your goals and priorities and themes. You realize that wasn't really what it was. You need to go back and redo it. And so that might cause the whole thing to change. 2 is you're not finishing your rocks. You're not finishing your objectives, and you're not making the time. Okay. Kind of related to that is 3, you just really underestimated or overestimated how long it would take to get something done. And the 4th thing that will happen is when you do something that unlocks a possibility that you never ever considered, that is worth pursuing in that moment, that makes you say, you know what, I was planning on going to Venus, but turns out that what I've done lets me go to Saturn, and Saturn is way better than Venus, and I'm going to go to Saturn. But that means I got to ditch a lot of what I was currently going to do. Then you might redo your annual momentum planner. But otherwise, once you set it, it kind of becomes your guidepost for the year. That's its whole job. If we do this well, what we're doing is we're making the hard work of making the decisions about what the heck we should be doing in fewer sittings, so that when it comes time to do the doing, we're not sitting there wondering what we should be doing. You've already decided that. Now we're just questioning how you're going to get it done and how close you are to that. And it's all how questions, which is fantastic because our brain actually thrives on how questions. The why and what questions, super hard for most of us. Okay. I feel like I beat that to death, but hopefully that was useful. Okay. Let me look in and see what other questions we have coming up. So Tanisha was like, I'm going to Saturn. I just printed a new planner. That happens. All righty. All right, Cheryl, I see your questions. And I'm going to jump into, let's see, house sections on the monthly. Okay. So Cheryl, I'm going to start with a general explanation. When we do open it up for conversation and things like that, I'd like to pull you on to make sure that you don't have any follow-on questions with this, because these are really great questions and I want to make sure to do as best I can to do it. So I'm just going to go with the house sections and start from the quarterly. Okay. Annual goals, quarterlies, these are the what's. These are the things that you've already pre-decided at a higher level of tier, right? Monthly objectives start to be, in this view, this the how sections, these 2 right here, right? That's what milestones and benchmarks. Oh, damn. Show my screen. Coming back. I got like 8 things going on and y'all are super gracious. I appreciate that. There we go. We are back. Okay. So we're looking at the quarterly momentum planner. You guys have seen that I'm just using the full, I'm using the full portfolio file, not the segmented. So it's just easier to use from this front. Okay. So the house space, when you look at the quarterly momentum planner, is in these areas here. Well, starting with the monthly objectives, milestones, and benchmarks. Now, why those are the house sections is because they go to the level of action for this level of perspective. You go down to that level. Now, in January, when we go to the monthly momentum planner, the house space starts to be within here, okay? And so this is where you start listing weekly sized projects, okay? Things that you think you can do this week. Now, the question people are asking, but they may not be typing it yet, is how do I determine what's a weekly sized project? Now, I'm going to answer with the unhelpful first start of, well, it depends on how many focus blocks you have. If you've only got, let's say, 3 focus blocks, you don't have a lot of power for a whole lot of the projects at this scale. So you might only have 1 or 2 blocks depending upon how big that project is. If you have a fuller slate, then you can have up to 5. Now, reminder, just because there are 5 lines does not mean you have to fill up those 5 lines. Way better to have 3 that you're actually going to do than to have 5 that you're just filling up the space. And if you have 1 on there, guess what, guys? That's fantastic. There are plenty of weeks. This week is one of those weeks for me, actually, where I have like 2. And that's all I get to do because I've had, a good meeting schedule. I've got this webinar. I've got all the other things that are related to it. I don't have any other sort of creative project time. And so it's working on the book a little bit and it's doing the other thing. That's what my week looks like. And that's okay. So this is the house space when it comes to this. Scheduled events at this level of perspective are the things that are going to disrupt weeks. Things that are going to disrupt weeks. So you don't necessarily need to put your doctor's appointment on Thursday, the 28th on this particular thing, unless that doctor's appointment is setting up for a surgery that you're going to be out for 3 or 4 days. Okay. So there's this concept here, and I know I keep hitting on it, of like what level of detail matters for that amount of time. Okay. Jumping to the weekly, the house space here is over in this business. And this might be where you put that doctor's appointment, okay? Unless it sets up for the surgery, so on and so forth. And then you have your deadline space, what needs to be finished this week, okay? House spaces are here, though. How are you actually, with everything on this left side, these are all your constraints and obligations. How are you going to get it done with the resources you have on the right side here, okay? And then lastly, these things up here become your constraints. Your house space here is your supporting task, and today's schedule. When will you do your task today, and or what meetings do you have, right? You can hack this space a little bit. Jess, we haven't published the seed of the post that I've written on that yet, have we?
Don't think so.
Okay. So guys, bear with me because I write a lot of stuff and then I don't necessarily know where it goes and where it's at. So we have more coming on how to use the day schedule, because some people are like, why do I only have 8 blocks? I need 16 blocks, Charlie. Or if I have 3 meetings, then where do I put them? So even though it has these little hashtags here, you might also be able to say, you know what, this is my morning block and I'm just going to put 4 little projects there. Or this is my afternoon and I'm going to put my meetings there. And then your meetings are governed by, your clock and things like that. We just set this here because most people we've learned like to have this be set to the hour. There's always this trick that we have with the planners where we want to make it flexible enough that you can hack it and make it your own, but not so flexible that you don't really know what to do with that block. Okay. So your house spaces here are supporting task and today's schedule. So let me see if that helps because I have to switch screens. Cheryl, does that help? Okay, good. Okay, it looks like that's helping people. Alrighty, guys. So a few more things, then we'll turn it over to questions and see if someone would want to walk through their projects. Jane, I see I have trouble planning on a daily level because of interruptions. That might be one of those things we talk about too. So let me talk a little bit about the difference between themes and resolutions. I could be brief there because y'all rock and you get it already. Okay. Jess, I think Cheryl is leaving some feedback too. You might want to capture that as we're doing the redesign for this year's planners. So themes and priorities are better than resolutions. Y'all have already heard me hate on resolutions. But the problem becomes when people say resolution, in my experience, you might be awesome at this, more awesome than other people. What they're really saying is aspirations. I aspire to do these things, and it sort of follows that because I aspire to do them, I am going to do them. But it doesn't follow in practice. It follows that you set a bunch of aspirations, and then you may or may not take action on those. So a resolution without action is just an aspiration. And I have no problem with people having aspirations. I do have a problem when people beat themselves up because they said, I would like to do this, and have made a commitment to do something about that, but actually haven't gone through the full process. And so what we end up with is we have too many resolutions, too many aspirations, as it were, that don't actually tie to our actual priorities. Your actual priorities are going to win every time, folks, right? If you are a mom and being a really kick-ass mom is a priority to you, all the actions that relate to that are going to trump other things, right? Unless you figure out how to balance and compromise and hold boundaries in different ways. Priorities always win, resolutions not so much. Resolutions often tend to be super rigid as well. I want to lose 15 pounds by the end of the year. Well, that's great. And they don't necessarily follow up with the how to do that. So I don't like them in general. They tend to be more work than they're worth. I like themes. And themes are closer to, we're going to go closer to Woo Land. Of course, I live in Portland, so y'all have to roll with that. But instead of saying, I want to lose 15 pounds by the end of the year, you might give yourself the theme of taking better care of your body. Now, the thing about a theme is it's much in that same way where you don't just get to say it and not take action on it, but how you take better care of your body may mean that you don't actually lose 15 pounds because you get your butt in the gym and all of a sudden you're packing on muscle and you've lost, 10 pounds of fat, but you've gained 10 pounds of muscle. You're still not at that weight goal, but you're taking better care of your body. So I want you to be thinking in terms of flexibility. In themes, I usually teach a whole workshop on this, and I realize now why it's a whole workshop. You want to think in broader terms of you might say discipline, you might be boundaries, you might be business growth, and you might each have your own different types of themes that aren't necessarily a resolution in that way. Priorities are something that reflect real challenges. So if you have a priority to, think of a better example here, Charlie. I was going to use one example, but I want to use another one. Think of a non-financial one, Charlie. So you might have a real priority to say, get your child into better school or to be a better caretaker, or you might have a priority around different things like that. Those are reflecting the real challenges that we want to solve against. So the same thing is true of resolutions, of having too many. Just be mindful that you don't have too many themes and priorities. Like having 5 different themes is about the same problem having 5 different priorities. So balance those. I basically wanted to open up this space to sort of don't think in terms of sort of that resolution aspiration sort of side of things, but think in terms of qualities and priorities, with themes being more of those qualities. Okay, very broad, I know. Okay, shaping the quarters. I'll be brief here. True momentum really happens when you start stringing quarter-sized projects together, because those are, most transformative projects require mini quarters. We're also really terrible with it, right? Because most of us can see a day and how a day might turn over. We can see how a week might turn over. Months for many people start getting super sketchy, right? We don't know. A lot of things can happen. When we go to the quarterly level, it might as well be a year damn long, right? When you really start thinking of elevating your confidence of being able to commit against the quarter and execute those quarters and tying those quarters together, that's where the magic happens. That's a broad statement. I'm not going to be able to teach how to do that in the next 10 minutes, but I want you to be mindful that that's really the goal that I want you to be thinking about. How do I start thinking in terms of executing at the quarterly level and tying those quarters together? Because that's where a lot of the magic happens. Okay, I just want to slide that out there. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I have a question with energy levels. How do we work with those? Somewhat of a different arc. We haven't tied them into the momentum planners or not quite yet, because as you can see, we already have quite a bit going on. But to answer the question about how to use energy levels, we have a few good tools. We have the daily, we have a productivity heat map, which is a tool that allows you to track where your energy is. That gives you the awareness of where your energies are. So that's one tool. Then we have the weekly block planner, or the weekly block scheduler, that will allow you to go through, and once you know where your energy is, start to build the week. Now, I can show you that pretty quickly. Thanks for the link, Jess. I was about to go there. Downloading. Okay. Okay, so this is the tool. You can get it on the link that Jess just showed. And this might be one of those things to where you see that, I'll go ahead and fill this out as if it were me real quick. And I'll just say 6 to 11. I know there should be more blocks there. But I know that pretty much from, that time to really, I'll make this at least 10, because these are my focus blocks throughout this whole period. And you guys can see how I could go through there and say, okay, here are my focus blocks. And then my admin block, or excuse me, my service blocks or social blocks end up here. And then I might go through and fill out the rest of those. I have restorative blocks, so on and so forth. But what this will allow me to do is when I'm making plans, I can say, okay, I have focus block 1 and focus block 2. Focus block 1. This one's easier to print out, by the way, where these might be focus block 1, focus block 2 here. I actually need to start this here. Didn't think I was going to talk about this, or I would have prepped, but you guys are awesome. So let's roll with it. Okay. So, from here to here and from there to there might be a focus block. And that looks like that for the rest of the week. And that way I know when I start looking at planning things, I'm like, okay, that's how many focus blocks I have. Now, if your schedule is different, if your, your schedule might be really different, and you might have, unfortunately, some things that are sitting in your morning, so on and so forth. So when you make your weekly block, when you look at it from a routine and systematic perspective, you may not be able to carve out every morning to be a focus block, because Friday morning might be the morning that you go pick up your kids, and that's just what it is. And so that becomes an admin block, right? And you lose that. So this gives you a structure or a template for the week. That's what I like to say. It's a template for the week. Then when you go to the other planners, you say, okay, this is kind of where my energy is. Where do I slot these types of things? And you can see how that can go on the daily momentum planner. So that's how you can use a little bit of that. Be looking for more teaching material over the course of the year where we tie these two together. more. We just published this, even though I've been using it for a long time. We just published this back in probably October. And so it's not as integrated into the rest of the tools as we like at this point. Okay. I'm looking at the questions. There was so someone asked about a podcast. Mike Vardy and I have done 2 different podcasts, and we talk about theming and time blocking, and I think in both of those in different ways. And so those are 2 resources for you. Really quickly, Cheryl, your daily CrossFit workout is considered recovery, not focus. Even though having done CrossFit, it doesn't feel like recovery, but that goes on sort of that self-care side of things. So, all right, let's look at our questions and start opening them up. I do have a good question from Chris here. He's like, maybe out of context here, but where tools do you suggest for organizing routine, admin, ritual work, or our regular type of work that just needs to be done daily, weekly, monthly? This is a recurring question, no pun intended. If it's truly routine, sort of ritual work, it depends on how that shows up. Largely, I would lump under an admin block and just do all those types of things. So the great thing about admin blocks is you can put on your planner, you can do admin block in the afternoon, and then you look at a task plan, or you look at a task tool like Asana, Basecamp, Action Item Catcher, whatever, and you could just use that to keep all the nits and gnats, and that way you don't need the 17 different tasks that you might need to do during that time. So typically you will clutter up, well, I won't say typically, you will clutter up the momentum planner system if you have all of the 17 phone calls that you need to make between 1 and 2. So that's how I would think about that. Now, what you would have to look at on that one, Chris, is that if you have a side hustle or create a project, or you have a bunch of stuff, you're on a bunch of boards and things like that happen after hours, what many people struggle with is they try to plan their days as if they had a full amount of focus blocks and full amount of energy to do those things, right? You don't. That's the side thing. So when I'm working with some of my students in workshops and everything like that, I'm like, I've got a side hustle and I'm just not making any momentum and it's not going anywhere, and people are lapping me. And I'm like, well, you're trying to build a business, or you are building a business on 2 focus blocks a week. Other people are building their businesses on 10 to 15 focus blocks a week, right? So it's not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong. You're just doing the best you can with the time you have available. So 2 different ways to think about that question, Chris, is one is if it's just routine admin-y stuff, just lump it under an admin block, and you know how much time that takes, and make sure you do it. I've learned the hard way, guys, that I have to have an admin block on my day. I have to know when that is going to be. Otherwise, I don't answer the emails. I don't check in with the team, and things don't happen. And whenever I skip a couple of days of admin blocks, there's that day where you got to sit down and get them all cleared out, and and I personally don't like those days. So I know, when I look at it, that I totally have to have an admin block somewhere in the day if I want to avoid that situation. So, Chris, there are actually 2 different questions that I'm answering, and one I'm sure you asked, and another I think I'm answering a different question. So I don't want to continue to answer the second question when you really only asked the first. But that's how you can use your sort of routine stuff. Dump them into an admin block. Keep that in a to-do list elsewhere. So when it's admin time, it's 2:00 admin time, you pull up the to-do list, you get after it. Pomodoros are really great for those. Pomodoros being 25 minutes of working, 5 minutes of break. You do a couple of those, get them done. Sometimes people ask why admin blocks are shorter. In my experience, most of us don't want to spend 2 hours on just admin, unfocused, like I'm just going to do 2 hours of emails, or I'm going to do 2 hours of phone calls. Our patience and our discipline and willpower with that tends to be closer to like 30 minutes. And then after about 30 minutes, we either need to take a break, or we'll naturally do things like find ourselves on Facebook or YouTube or whatever your distraction is, because you just frankly don't want to swallow those admin frogs. So that's why they're shorter, so that you account for that. And I typically like people to do like an admin block and then either have something that they want to do, or have a recovery block and then maybe have another admin block, as opposed to having a big afternoon of clearing out your email, because I don't know, you guys may be more disciplined than I am on that front, but I know an afternoon of cleaning out emails can get punted for many, many weeks. So there you go. So my recommendation for tools, by the way, is Asana. You've heard me mention that over and over and over again. It's a free tool. It's really flexible. I'm tempted to show you the way that our Asana is set up, but I'm looking at the time. What you can do is set up recurring task in there. So you can have a daily task. You can have, okay, I have some requests for Asana, but I'm not going to be, all right, so whatever. We'll do it, guys. Yeah, we'll schedule another webinar just for Asana, folks. Okay. Routine task, let me put it this way. Recurring task and routine task and schedule task, all of those different types of things, computers are really, really good at that, right? Really, really, really good at that. So use those tools for that, because you don't want your memory to be taken up of whether you need to do something Thursday. Put that in a tool that's going to tell you that on Thursday, this needs to be done. Because if you don't have a tool that says on Thursday, this needs to be done, the tool is your brain. But that is competing with all the other stuff you're trying to do now. So it's Tuesday and you're trying to do something Tuesday, but your brain's like, and we got to do this thing Thursday. You're like, but it's Tuesday, but it's like, and we got to do this thing Thursday, and you can't let it go. That's where technology comes in, is super helpful. And I think that's where the momentum planners and a tool like Asana comes in really, really well. Okay, there we go. Enough said about that.